But these voters are too savvy. You're not going to lie to them. You're not going to placate them. They're very clear on what they want. They want the genocide to end right now. And if Biden literally is as powerless as he says, then he could prove it. Cut off the weapons, allow a vote to go through on the UN Security Council, and if they keep going without your consent, then you've done all that you can do. But he hasn't done that. There's not been a policy change. There's just all these stories that he leaks to the press about how he, he's saying, man, this guy is such an asshole, and I've vocalized my concerns. I can't believe Bibi. But you're not changing the policy, and that's the thing that he doesn't get. Like, he thinks that this is 1994, where you could just say one thing, and then there's no way to verify it. But we can actually see now. People are savvy. They're very, closely following the story. They see that you are not going to make a change because you haven't changed the policy. So rhetoric is one thing, policy is a different thing, and he hasn't changed the policy, hence why they're not supporting him.
Did you guys see the election in Michigan? What were your thoughts on that? I'm so curious. The uncommitted vote supposed to get 10,000 ended up getting over 100,000.
I was blown away personally.
Yeah.
It was great to see, honestly. I wasn't expecting them to break 100K. And they did.
No.
Yeah.
I know people were like, "Oh, they purposely said they only thought they would get 10K and to keep expectations low to begin with." I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did do that. I'm sure they did say 10K instead of 20 or 25K.
Yeah, I think at most they got 20.
Yeah, I don't think they thought they were gonna break 100K.
Yeah.
And also, again, you had people come out to vote for uncommitted. It's basically the most you often say people go out to vote for somebody, right? But they didn't to do that. You got over 100,000 people to go out just to vote in a way that voices their disapproval of what the president is doing. That's not easy. That's not, you can't even get 100K people out there to vote for an actual person that they supposedly believe in and support and want to be the next whatever it is they're voting for. That's
I think it
crazy.
A good measure for how successful it was, and typically this is a good measure for this kind of thing, is does a place like Morning Joe or CNN, are they are they finding ways to be able to downplay it, or are even they surprised and actually discussing this issue and actually discussing it seriously? Like Morning Joe, he was even like, yeah, this is something that Biden has to worry about. And, CNN discussed this in depth. He brought Mehdi Hassan on, I think, yesterday to discuss it as well. So they recognize that this is a serious issue, and 100,000 people, man, that's you are really
the percentage. The percentage does not matter. It was never about the percentage that it got. People were like, it didn't even hit 15%. That doesn't matter. It was the raw number that mattered, because the point of this uncommitted vote was to say, hey, you won Michigan in 2020 by just a couple, 100,000, I think it was 150,000.
155,000, they beat it. And Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 10,477 votes, I think. I looked it up the other day.
So
10,477.
So basically, for Joe Biden, if he doesn't do anything, he has to hope that he has enough turnout. Like if he's just writing those 110,000 plus uncommitted voters off completely, he's got to hope that everyone who turned out in 2020 turns out. Donald Trump did not gain anyone, which, as the incumbent president that Biden is, there's certainly going to be people who cross back over. That's just how some people vote. Some people, they're unhappy with how things currently are, so they just vote for the other guy. No matter what the politics are, that's just how some people are. It's a general election. The entire country's voting. Most people don't pay attention to politics the way we do on this show. They're unhappy with their current status. They blame the current president and vote for the other guy. So he's got to hope that none of this stuff happens. He gets all of his same turnout, which is not going to happen. And that only then everything will be fine if he's going to write all those people off.
Yeah, and it's sorry, go ahead, David.
I was going to say, I think before October 7th, he was having problems in Michigan, and it was already too close. So, I mean, it's going to be tough. He really has to turn it around, change like drastically change policy towards Israel to get a lot of those people back. I think a lot of them he's already lost because, you know, a lot of people have family there, right? They lost family there. Like for them to go out and vote for Biden, even if you want to, you know, try and, I don't know, argue with them or try to explain, you know, what Trump would be like. It doesn't. These people lost family. Like you can't. There's no, you know, changing that. So it's just he lost a lot of people already. It's going to be a serious fight there, and as I said, already was a fight I think before this even happened.
I mean, he's also made it clear to the Muslim and Arab American community that he just doesn't view them as, at the very least, an important voting bloc, and that's at the very least. At the very most, he doesn't even view them as equal humans to other people that he cares about. Like that's the thing too. Like he it's not even just like he's been like empathetic and, you know, putting stuck between a rock and a hard place, but put on the show to let, you know, Muslim Americans and Arab Americans know that he cares and he's doing what he can. There hasn't even been that. He just doesn't fucking care. He has shown them no empathy, has denied even the number of deaths there, has just made up lies about what has happened. He just does not even give a shit. And it's honestly one of the most depressing things I've ever seen a president do, honestly, seriously.
Right.
Like,
Could you imagine if Donald Trump wins? Like, and especially with all that talk, it's like we have to stop fascism. He's a fascist, Project 2025. He's quoting Mein Kampf. Like, this is really bad. But if you did that to support a far right government, like that was your choice. Like if it comes down to, because of how Michigan is flexing now, you won't get those 16 electoral college votes. You need those. Like your pathway mathematically becomes almost impossible unless you like have some other method that we don't know about from the last election that you're going to flip a whole bunch more, like, you know, electoral college seats. So if that's the case, if this is the pathway, that's your choice then, libs. You get one of two things. You can't have both, right? You can't both support Israel and stop Donald Trump. You got to choose one of those two things. What's more important to you right now?
And really, Michigan is a test for other states too, right? Because it's not the only state with like a large Arab and Muslim population. Arizona also has that as well. But there's also more backlash that's building. Because Colorado, now there's an organization to get them to vote uncommitted. The largest union in Washington state, they endorsed uncommitted. So this is building. It's getting bigger, and it's a problem that's not going away. And there was a Politico article that came out before the election where Biden's administration was apparently freaking out about this uncommitted vote. And now the response, and I have a video about the response from the Biden administration tomorrow, but basically his national campaign co-chair, Mitch Landrieu, he is taking this as a messaging problem and not a genocide problem, because the response that they gave to listen to Michigan was that, and I'm paraphrasing, you could watch my video tomorrow, they basically have to be more effective in communicating that Trump is going to do a Muslim ban. And that's how they can convince these people to vote for Joe Biden.
So they're so cooked. They're so cooked if they do that.
It's just, it feels hopeless. And by the way, so the ceasefire that he was talking about in the ice cream shop, which the optics of that, as Palestinians are starving because of a genocide he's supporting.
Creepy. Seth Meyers smiling beside him like a ghoul, just I'm like, oh my god.
If they're gonna do that, the Biden campaign or Biden White House should have been smart enough to not let press in there. Like it, you know, if you're gonna go shoot some video, then do that. But like, that was ridiculous.
Well, I was gonna say that the ice cream ceasefire promise is now off the table as well, because he said today after the flower massacre that it's going to kind of make it more difficult to do negotiations. Of course, you know, it makes sense. And nobody really expected him to follow through on that. Even Mehdi Hassan was saying on CNN, you know, I have my doubts. Gazans were saying we have our doubts, because Netanyahu was already saying, like, he was throwing cold water on the situation, saying, look, we're doing the ground invasion in Rafah. It's inevitable at this point. A ceasefire will just delay it.
All experts have said it's going to be a slaughterhouse.
A slaughter. And now Biden's administration is worried about a ground invasion in Lebanon coming. So it's spiraling. The backlash is spiraling, and he just refuses. Like that inertia, he won't change course. And so I think Mehdi Hassan really put it best. He said that Biden is basically choosing to sacrifice democracy for Netanyahu. That's what he's choosing. And it's so frustrating because he has months to reverse course. And even if you reverse course right now, did a 180, it's still going to be difficult. I think you're not going to win back everyone in Michigan and young people, but you can still try. The fact that he's not even trying with months ahead tells us that he's just like, the dude he's checked out. It's just so ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and the best way to really frame this is something that Lance was hitting on was, if you support sending money and weapons to Israel, if you support the Biden position, the current Democrat position, then you are helping Trump. Like they keep trying to claim that people, like the vote uncommitted, they're trying to help Trump. No, clearly they are not. They are trying to send Biden a warning that you are going to lose this election if you don't change course. You
can't have
if
both.
you support the current policy in Israel, you are helping Trump, because that is clearly what we are seeing in states like Michigan.
Yeah.
I hate that. I like the voter shaming does not like win you elections either. Like that strategy of being like, oh well, come on, like they do it towards like LGBTQ plus people being like, oh, don't you know that you're gonna get like you always talk about how dangerous it is. Did you not care to do it towards Muslims and Arab Americans too? Just like, oh, they'll export you. You're gonna have to get kicked out of the country if you don't try and stop them, right? And it's like the message should not be towards like me. It should be towards the president of the fucking United States right now. This is the person who can change the course of history right now. Does he want to defeat Trump? Is it your priority? Because like I'm on board. I don't want to see Trump come to power. Right.
I don't either. I mean, look, I live in a blue state, so I would be insulated from a lot. But the fact remains that like a lot of people would suffer under a Trump administration, and the damage that he would do, assuming we survive another Trump term and we still have a democracy after that, it would be irreparable. I mean, how much more Supreme Court justices would he get? How many more federal justices would he be able to appoint? So the fact that like they, on one hand, the Biden administration and Democrats can stress democracy, but then do fuck all to actually try to save our democracy. It is so frustrating to me. And the fact that liberals
Benjamin
are just
Netanyahu. Like,
oh yeah, this
of
fascist.
all reasons, for a genocide,
so
and like a genocide. I mean, you can't wrap your head around this.
No, it's completely like we're gonna look back at this moment, I think 10 years from now, and be just shocked if we survive, right? Because it's just there's no explanation for it. Like we can try to, articulate why this is wrong and try to rationalize his decision making, weigh the pros and the cons and the incentives. It's just fucking stupid. It's just you can't explain. Like this is just the worst politics I've seen. Like I said that Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, where she didn't even go to the Rust Belt, that was like the worst campaign of ever, because she not only told leftists to go fuck themselves after a really heated primary, like she didn't even try to win back the Rust Belt. And her whole goal, as Chuck Schumer put it, was, you lose some leftists, you pick up some moderates, right? And she lost. This campaign makes Hillary Clinton look like a fucking strategic genius. Like that campaign is a million times better than Biden's campaign right now. And if you look at the polls in these swing states, he is losing. David did a great job in his video with Michigan. Every single poll, you were going through it, David, like +2, +5 for Trump. Mm-hmm. So like if you
ever since October 30th, every poll has been for Trump.
That's I mean, listen, it is true. If we really want to be like bury our heads in the sand, it is true that Biden has been overperforming the polls and Trump has been underperforming the polls. Having said that,
a lot can change in 7 months.
A lot can change,
right? Yes,
but do we really want to roll the dice? Like Democrats emphasize to us how horrifying a Trump term would be, but if you try to say anything about Biden, how he needs to change course, they attack you for it. They don't acknowledge that there's a difference between constructive criticism and destructive criticism. They don't realize that us saying, hey, there's a cliff right there and we're headed straight towards it at 100 miles per hour, and just saying, hey, fuck Biden, like this is like things have changed, and they've got to realize that people are engaged. Like the people
it's 70% of Democratic voters, right? They want a ceasefire. They don't support this, and the majority of Americans as well, and his staffers, like independents too. This like the world, by the way, not just Americans, Canadians too, overwhelmingly are polling. Like this is the first time where people defining this as genocide is almost at 50% polling. That's like a massive change. There is a completely different paradigm now. They're ignoring this at their peril. Honestly, it's like it's so infuriating.
And he can't gaslight his way out of this. And that's what I think he's trying to do, right? He's definitely trying to at least now placate people who want a ceasefire, which is why he talked about the ceasefire in the ice cream shop. And, I'm trying to have Israel sign this letter that says we promise not to do war crimes with the weapons that you give us. Like he's trying to get us to think that he cares, but the problem is that these are not your average voters.
The other thing, right?
Right.
Like he's saying that he's going to like prohibit extremist settlers, but just extremist ones.
Just extremist ones.
Yeah.
Very bizarre. But these
Yeah,
voters are too savvy. You're not going to lie to them. You're not going to placate them. They're very clear on what they want. They want the genocide to end right now. And if Biden literally is as powerless as he says, then he could prove it. Cut off the weapons, allow a vote to go through on the UN Security Council. And if they keep going without your consent, then you've done all that you can do. But he hasn't done that. There's not been a policy change. There's just all these stories that he leaks to the press about how he's saying, man, this guy is such an asshole, and I've vocalized my concerns. I can't believe Bibi. But you're not changing the policy, and that's the thing that he doesn't get. Like, he thinks that this is 1994, where you could just say one thing, and then there's no way to verify it. But we can actually see now, people are savvy. They're very, closely following the story. They see that you are not going to make a change because you haven't changed the policy. So rhetoric is one thing, policy is a different thing, and he hasn't changed the policy, hence why they're not supporting him. So it's so frustrating to me to see this, because the choice is his. He can still turn things around, but he doesn't want to, and it's so frustrating.
No.
And I hate.
He's a proud Zionist. He says it out loud. Like in that interview with Seth Meyers, he's like, "What is it? I am a Zionist, and not a single Jewish person would feel safe if Israel did not exist." And that is such a fucked up thing to say when you've got the largest Jewish population on the planet in the country that you're the commander in chief in. But again. Yeah,
it's just insulting. So Jewish people here, they're not safe under you as the president. And the other things they've said to debase themselves. Ro Khanna was questioning Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin today and saying, I don't know who said this, but somebody had said in the U.S. government, one of the Biden administration officials, maybe the chat can help me out, that Israel goes further to protect civilians than the United States military does. Now, listen, we had a drone program. Murderous. And when it didn't murder, it terrorized people in Pakistan, in Yemen, in Somalia. But even the U.S. military, as bad as they are, I think that they take more precautions than the IDF does. Even actual people in the U.S. military have said, when it came to the Jabalia refugee camp, they're like, we would not have bombed in that area if we had intelligence that there was a militant there. You don't do that. You don't bomb civilian centers like that. So the fact that they say these things, I mean, it's just, it is so ridiculous. There's not the words to express it. It's just shocking. And then you see the flower massacre today, and it's like, this ain't going to change. You would think that it's like, okay, if bombing hospitals and refugee camps and cultural centers and schools, if that's not, if that didn't change it, then maybe this will, but it's not. Nothing will change it. It's just, I'm losing my mind.
The thing with that one, the flower massacre, is that there are people in my heart I genuinely do not believe, I've spoken to them, I've interviewed them, and I'm just not going to start some teen name streamers, but there are people, liberals and streamers, who are tweeting out stuff where I'm like, at what point is there going to be that breaking moment where we're like, and I keep thinking it's going to happen. It was like one day, it was like, there was that, poor girl who died because she was in a car and the car was being shot up with her family. She lost her family, but then she called into an ambulance, and the IDF got that notification, so they knowingly targeted rescue workers going to, that was such a big story that I was like, okay, this is going to break through. It's going to make some liberals and democratic, no matter what, we have to support Israel people suddenly change. But there are other people where they were justifying that slaughter as today being that it was actually because Palestinians were fighting. If you watch the footage of the IDF reliefs, they were fighting each other, and so it was just to prevent people from stealing it. And I was like, they're forcibly being starved. I don't know when you turned your humanity completely off, but I can't imagine what I would. Yes, I would fucking be trying to break into the flower truck to get the fucking flour to feed my dying family because I haven't eaten in months. Are you fucking kidding me? And then we're open fired upon. What the fuck is going on?
They felt
here?
Unsafe. The Israeli or the forces felt unsafe. So that was
Hamas was
reason enough to kill 100 people, injure 700 more.
It's even as they starve them and kill them due to hunger. They try to portray them as savages. Look at the way they act when we finally allow an aid. Yes. I mean, I'm sorry, how many people, if you have kids, you would kill for your kids if your kid was hungry, right? Everybody can say things like this, the extraordinary measures they would take to protect their family. But when Gazans do it, since they don't have the equal level of humanity as everyone else, it's like, man, look at these savages. They're just bum rushing the fucking
They don't
cart.
think of them as humans. They don't think of them as humans. That's the only way that they can possibly be separating that in their minds, to justify any of this to themselves, is they don't think they're human. And it's just this is why the only response, or the only way to potentially stop any of this, is for Israel's allies like the US to cut off funding, cut off support. That is the only way to potentially to stop any of it. I do want to share this.
Right. I mean, Americans have been sort of taught, sort of brainwashed in a way to view one side as equal to them, and another side as terrorists. Period. Just terrorists. Right. Just no explanation, anything more than that. Just one side is good and like us, the other side is bad and not like us.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a State Department spokesperson. Let's just watch this exchange.
On the principle of it, why is it so difficult for this government to say we condemn the killing of children, Palestinian women and children? Why can't you say the word condemn?
Saeed, if you listen to what I said a moment ago,
hold
on. Saeed, please don't interrupt me. Yeah? I said far too many Palestinians have died. Thousands of Palestinian children have died, and it is a tragedy when one of them dies.
No, that's not.
Of course, we don't want to see a single
tragic, like, you know, I don't know, a car accident's a tragedy. Like this is happening on purpose. There's somebody doing the murdering.
Death during a weather event is a tragedy. Like no one's at fault for that. Usually, you know, it's a event of God or whatever it's called. I can't.
Act of God.
Block right now. Act of God. Thank you.
Act of God.
Yeah, he did not say condemn, and you know, I'm sorry, saying too many have died is saying that there's an amount which is tolerable. There's an amount of dead that are tolerable.
Well, and while listening to this, like, imagine if the roles were reversed and he's talking about Israeli deaths, and you know, it was a tragedy. Like, just like, think of how, because it can be hard to really, you know, this is for viewers, obviously you all know, but it can be hard for some people to really understand how twisted this all is until you try to think of it if it was the other way around, and it'd be so glaring and so obvious that it would get called out. But this gets ignored day in, day out, and they continue having these sorts of responses.
Child die. We don't want to see anyone die as a result of this conflict, which is why we have been working to bring this conflict to a close as soon as possible. But whenever you ask me these questions, I do think you continue to kind of just elide over the fact that Hamas bears a great deal of responsibility for putting those children in harm's way. Remember,
Israel bears responsibility for putting those civilians in harm's way. Like, just think of how fucking twisted all of this is.
It was Hamas that launched this war in the first place with an attack on Israel that killed
men, began on the 7th.
And children, and that Hamas that hid and continues to hide behind children as human shields.
Oh, right,
so, yes,
the human shields. Good. All the classics.
Wait, hang on a second. Can you pause it? Because they keep saying this, but why is it that they are bombing civilian infrastructure disproportionately, but the Hamas tunnels for the most part are intact? Like, they're not trying to target Hamas. Like, this is an extermination. They want to wipe out Palestinians, period.
I don't think people have wrapped their heads around the scale of the starvation right now, but I was listening on Democracy Now! To the UN World Food Program chairman, who was saying that this has never happened in human history at this scale, where there's nearly a half a million children who are at the point of starvation soon. And he's like, people have to recognize immediately what the costs will be if something is not done. They're used to getting close to 500 or 600 trucks a day, and now there's barely 100 getting through anymore. And like, it's going to be you know, historically horrifying. It already is, but like, you're like, every moment that goes by is another moment that people are dying from starvation. Every single day.
Multiplying.
Yeah.
Any child die. We don't want to see any innocent civilian die, which is why we are working so hard to try to achieve a temporary ceasefire that would alleviate their suffering.
Temporary
ceasefire. I have not
ceasefire.
heard the word condemn. I mean, you know, this war began way before October 7. I mean, you know, in fact, the reason that this administration was so strong on, you know, pursuing a Middle East peace and so on, because the war has been going on for decades before and so on. We heard this administration when they came into office talking about reopening the consulate, talking about reopening the PLO office here, talking about restarting and reigniting peace talks and so on, re-aiding UNRWA and so on, simply because that war has been going on for a very long time, because Gaza was under siege for a very, very long time.
Saeed, nothing that happened before October 7th justifies what Hamas did on that day. And it is what Hamas did on that day that led to the outbreak of this war and led to the suffering of so many innocent
It's not a
Palestinians.
war.
And
Wait,
I
but hold on.
just feel like-
Pause this. If that is your if that is your through line there, if that's your narrative there, and you're not condemning the Israeli response, then you're saying what Hamas did to Israel, the 1,000 or so people that were killed on October 7th, is not justified by everything that happened over the past 75 years. Fine. But then, by that logic, you were saying the 30,000 people now that have been killed by Israel in Gaza, that is justified as a response to October 7th.
Yeah.
It's like David said, they're not seen as human.
He doesn't even realize it because again, their lives don't fucking matter. It's
important to
Okay,
correct that fact.
that's fine. I mean, you guys said this many times before, but in fact, Israel has been waging war on Gaza for a very, very long time.
It's so fucking frustrating just to see these brick walls. Like,
It's the feigned obliviousness. We're telling them to do better. It's just I'm so sick of it.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also, thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.